Hello, and welcome to another edition of Ask the Professor, a crowd-driven, crowd-funded feature where we respond to your questions on economics, politics, history, the Constitution, geopolitics, culture, all those things that matter to us in our life together as citizens. And today's question comes from Danny, and he asks, what should Prime Minister Justin Trudeau have said about Kinder Morgan's proposed Trans Mountain pipeline expansion in terms of the Constitution, in terms of federal power, and in terms of getting the project built now that it's been approved? And this is almost a good question. The thing is, though, it's no longer a question of what the Prime Minister should have said. Justin Trudeau is a lovely talker. And like a great many people with the gift of the gab, he has a weakness for believing that to say something is to do something. Far too often, he sends words to do the work of deeds. The problem we have now with the Trans Mountain expansion is that this pipeline has been approved by the federal government following due process. It is in federal jurisdiction. It has been challenged in court repeatedly, and every time the pipeline project has won, and yet it still can't get built because the law is not being upheld. And what the Prime Minister needs to do now is not say the federal government has jurisdiction, not say the pipeline will get built, but take concrete steps to get it built. Now, what exactly these are, I'm not in a position to specify. It's a very complicated matter, but the federal government has all kinds of lawyers and other experts who do know these things. And I'll give you just a couple of examples here of things that need to be overcome, not talked about, not criticized, but overcome. One is the tendency of the British Columbia government and others to launch a series of court actions, all of which end up unsuccessful, but which continually impose delays. There must be some mechanism for getting the courts to stop issuing injunctions, not because the rule of law and the right to appeal to court isn't important, but at a certain point, it becomes lawfare. If you've lost enough cases, it must be possible to go to court and get the obstruction itself prevented, get injunctions against the injunctions or something along those lines. And here's another one. This is kind of an odd one, but the city of Burnaby, BC, has contracted its policing out to the RCMP, as many Canadian jurisdictions have. But municipal authorities have said they will not pay overtime or other costs to the RCMP for activities related to preventing protesters from obstructing the pipeline. There must be some way that the federal government can order the federal police force to enforce the law. And it may be that they would need to guarantee these costs. Again, I'm not sure the exact mechanisms, but it must be possible to get the law upheld. Even if Burnaby had its own municipal police force, if there were actually instructions from the mayor and or city council to the police not to uphold the law, there has to be a mechanism whereby the federal government can take over the policing and see to it that the rules are upheld, that injunctions that have been granted by the courts against protesters actually mean that protesters can't obstruct the site. Those are just two examples. There are plenty of others. But here's the problem. If the federal government cannot actually make it possible to build a pipeline that it has approved, and the regulatory process is by no means a rubber stamp. Frankly, I think it's actually too difficult to get projects approved, but somehow this one did get approved. Well, once that's happened, once the company has played by the rules, and it wants to build a pipeline that will bring enormous benefit to Canadians in all kinds of areas. Don't forget, British Columbia is dependent on fossil fuels. It's not as though they can say, well, we don't need this diluted bitumen being shipped through here because we don't use hydrocarbons. Of course they do. So once it's been approved according to the rule of law, it must be possible to get it built according to the rule of law. And what Justin Trudeau needs to be able to say about this is not, it should happen, or we have the right. He needs to be able to say, it has happened because we did the things necessary to make it happen. Ask the Professor is a crowd-driven feature, as I said at the beginning. We rely on your questions, and if you have one you'd like to submit, here's the URL that will take you to the appropriate place on my website. It's also crowd-funded. If you're enjoying it and you want it to continue, and you're not already a backer of my work, click here. This will take you to the place on my site where you can become a monthly supporter so that Ask the Professor and all the other things that I do can continue to happen. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.